My name is Katie Noonan, and I am a co-chair with David Wofford of the Rotary Nature Center Friends. I am a longtime teacher in Oakland, and I came to love the lake and its wonderful presence here in the center of Oakland by bringing students to the lake to study biology and environmental science for 20 years, really. I retired in 2014 and began to do environmental education myself. And that's one of the reasons I found and began working as co-chair of Rotary Nature Center Friends.
And David, tell me how you got involved.
Well, I'm David Wofford, and I'm a city planner and local historian and a community development specialist, in addition to being co-chair of the Rotary Nature Center Friends with Katie Noonan. And we came together, I guess, about 2 years ago to design and plan the reopening of the Rotary Nature Center.
Katie, can you talk about what the goals of the Friends are?
Yes, the goals of the Friends are to support the Rotary Nature Center in its role as a center for everyone in Oakland to learn about nature and our place in nature, and how we can be good stewards of our environment going forward for all people in Oakland. So we felt a great loss when the Rotary Nature Center was closed in 2017. It had been a hub for education, for school groups, for seniors, for interested adults of all kinds. And we really missed that and wanted to support its reopening.
David, can you talk about how your group worked to reopen? And who did you work with? Give me a little bit of the background on the Rotary Nature Center, and then kind of bring me to how you got it reopened.
In terms of who our partners are and who we've worked with along these lines, it's been a three-year process now. And for 2 years, we were in meetings and constant communication with the Parks Department, Public Works, the mayor, and the city council, and a number of other Lake Merritt advocates about the need to reopen and what the design and operation should look like. Perhaps most significantly, we implemented a public awareness campaign, rekindling the hopes and connections of many citizens who visited the center over the years, and then also introducing hundreds, if not thousands, of new residents in town to the center and its potential. And so in a real sense, our role is to oversee and guide the operations of the Nature Center as it fulfills its mission inside of the Wildlife Refuge. Our goal is to fulfill that mission by bringing science and nature to the modern world of equity and inclusion and sustainability as effectively as we can.
You talked about the center being inside the refuge. What makes up the entirety of the Wildlife Refuge?
So Lake Merritt and the surrounding land was declared a wildlife refuge by the California State Legislature in 1870. And the actual extent was out to 100 rods from the high tide line of Lake Merritt, which in modern times is a little bit over 5 football fields out. So actually, urban Oakland has kind of encroached on the refuge to a certain extent, but it includes not only the water, but also the surrounding land that is part of the ecology of the lake. It was declared by the state of California in 1870, and although other refuge systems have grown up around it, the state wildlife refuge system and the federal one, it's still a wildlife refuge, and it is still that is still its designation today. So exactly finding out what its status is can be a little bit tricky, but it has never been declared not a refuge, and therefore it is our responsibility to be good stewards of this unique place in the middle of an urban area.
I'd like to add that the interesting thing about that question, as I understand it, in terms of what the physical characteristics of the wildlife refuge are, is that in nature, an ecosystem is interconnected. And you can't just draw an imaginary line in the water or in the grass and expect the fish and insects and bugs to respect that. They're not. And so basically, in order to be proper stewards of the wildlife refuge, it pretty much encompasses all of the natural life that it's immediately attached to and adjacent to. So then that gets us over to Harrison on one side, Grand Avenue on another side, Lakeshore Avenue on another, and East 12th on another, and then through the channel all the way out into the San Francisco Bay, as all of that ecosystem interacts and works together. And our job is to take a look at how that is evolving, to collect scientific data and record it and kind of keep track of it and monitor it and share it with the world in our role as stewards.
It's a great description. I like that. And then just to clarify, it is the first wildlife refuge declared in all of the country?
That is correct. It is the first governmentally designated wildlife refuge. So there may have been private ones that people maintained, but this was unique and first in setting aside public land for wildlife preservation and conservation. And so it really sets a new tone in people's relationship with their environment and ecology. And so that's something we want to celebrate.
And then let's talk about why 2020 is important. What does this year signify?
So 2020 is a pivotal year for a number of reasons we're all very much aware of, in terms of the pandemic, of course, taking care of our people in our immediate area. And also many of us are aware that is a pivotal time for climate change decisions that we are making. It is the 150th anniversary of Oakland being the first in the nation to set aside land for conservation. And that set in motion a whole set of new thoughts about relating to nature in an urban setting that was developed by Paul Covell and the naturalists at Lake Merritt in Oakland during the 20th century, that looks at how people relate to the ecology and considers people part of the ecology, not just outside viewers of something beautiful that nature provides, but some people who are responsible for being good stewards and maintaining things into the future. So very important date, not only for looking backward at what we've accomplished, but also for looking forward to the challenges that we have and how we're going to meet them in a global view.
Mm-hmm.
But I do want to say this about the designation of it as a wildlife refuge. And that, it's a famous story about how part of that was due to Samuel Merritt's owning of the property and wanting to stop the hunting of birds and other animals in order to subdivide it and develop it. And it's true. Well, let's go back and say that California had just become a state in 1848. And then in 1849, gold was found in California, which started the rush. And so we're talking just in 1870 when the refuge was established. That's something like 20 years. And in that time, so many people have rushed into California that it really affected the ecosystem. And so these forward-looking men like Samuel Merritt and the men that he was involved with, they knew that there were a lot more people coming and that there would be a much greater impact. So although they were hell-bent on development, they were also forward-looking in the sense of wanting to conserve and protect the natural environment. And to their credit, in that decade, 1870 to 1880, 90,000 more people arrived in the Bay Area and 40,000 of them settled here in Oakland. And that's a huge impact.
Mm-hmm. So Katie, tell me what you had planned for the 150th celebration.
We planned to have to build awareness by an art project installation, which was the banner project. Mm-hmm. And we were able to have an artist design a banner in honor of the 150th anniversary of the refuge. And that was Adrian Cotter. is our artist. And then a designer helped us interface with the city and the fabricators to get 20 banners placed around the city. And they're actually still up today, largely because of COVID and the unfortunate problem that a lot of events can't take place. But we had it all arranged so that they would go up by March 18th, which was the date of passage of the California Wildlife Act. Then on that date, we were going to have a big gathering at Lake Merritt with people invited from policy, public leaders. The mayor had agreed to come, city council members, just a variety of local environmental organizations, scientists. And then in the afternoon, we were going to have tabling all along the walkway with all the organizations presenting their programs and how they are looking to the future to steward the environment, both at Lake Merritt and throughout the region. So it was going to be like a festival, an environmental stewardship festival, and dedication to the future. And we were very excited and very reluctant to have to face the facts that it was really not safe to have that kind of a gathering during the pandemic and during the period of sheltering in place.
The year 2020 is important because of the 150 years anniversary. But it's also important now because of the pandemic, and which has revealed to us how interconnected we all are on the planet. And combined with the unprecedented increased awareness and public reaction to systemic racism here in the United States and around the world, frankly. And so the Nature Center and the Wildlife Refuge have become key sources of science and understanding of the natural world and its impact on us and our impact on it. And it's a great place to start. Having said that, I want to get back to the intention of the commemoration, which was to bring together our city leaders and leaders of the environmental movement, along with other parks and scientific institutions, to celebrate, foster, and develop this understanding of the world that we live in and our impact on it and its impact on us.
So how have you shifted then to continue the celebrations in alternative ways?
Yes, well, we've kept in close contact with all of the people who wanted to contribute to the original program. And they were all very excited about the possibility of coming to the lake individually and making remarks and reminiscences about their experiences at the lake for a video record. And ultimately, we want to make a regionally available Zoom meeting in the fall. We want to be able to share those interviews with the public in the fall in a Zoom meeting, which would include the interviews and also supporting video and old photos, and then a chance to interact with maybe a panel of some of those people who want to join us to commemorate in real time. And then bring together the full diversity of Oakland looking forward. I think it will be a really wonderful thing to do.
Nice. You mentioned Paul Koval, and there's a book that he wrote. Can you tell us about the book?
What I will tell you is that I met Paul Koval separately from this, from my work at the Rotary Nature Center. I met him as a kid in the late 80s, and as it turns out, just before a couple of years before he passed away. But he was still up, and he was still spry, and he took me on walks, on hikes, and I had a hard time keeping up with him. And all around the world, he had traveled and studied and learned, and he came back here and then worked for the Oakland parks, and then later worked for the East Bay Regional Parks, and then also for UC Berkeley, and was significantly involved in the layout and the designs of all of those parks and all of much of our landscape. It was, frankly, by coincidence, if there are any coincidences, that years later I found myself as involved with the Rotary Nature Center Friends, and then eventually co-chair and discovered that Paul, my good friend Paul Covell, had founded and he designed the Nature Center itself, which opened up in 1953. He was the first municipal naturalist in the United States, and he was hired by a man named Mott, who was the director of Oakland Parks at the time.
Wow.
And then later, under President Ronald Reagan, he became the director of Park Service. Pretty significant operations in terms of parks and park designs coming out of Oakland. And our work as the Rotary Nature Center Friends grows directly out of the spirit and intention and inspiration of Mott, Mr. Mott, and Paul Covell.
Mm-hmm.
And Katie can speak more to the book, perhaps.
Yeah, I was going to ask Katie, have you read the book?
Yes, I have. The title is People Are for the Birds, Adventures of the First Municipal Park Naturalist at Lake Merritt, America's Oldest Wildlife Refuge. And it was published by Western Interpretive Press, which is still in existence and is, according to Paul Covell's son, Jim Covell, is planning to do a second edition soon. They've organized to do that. Paul Covell was so impassioned about teaching about birds, especially, that he would give talks at the shores of Lake Merritt with a megaphone where people would come to see the birds from migrating through the city. And he caught the eye of William Penn Mott, who was the Oakland Park director at the time, and said that Paul Covell, in his mind, contributed more to conservation consciousness of the people of the East Bay than any single individual. And I think conservation consciousness is something that really pinpoints what Covell was all about. Covell's awareness of how interconnected we are with a very vast areas of land, that many of the birds that we see come from South America or up from the Arctic tundra, and that they depend on the environment at Lake Merritt. And conversely, we depend on the health of the environment for clean air, clean water, and fertile soil. And so this conservation consciousness idea that he had really has a lot of importance today. And Rotary Nature Center Friends has been fostering this idea of community through activities involving young people, the full diversity of Oakland. We've been doing water sampling, water testing. We've been looking at the marsh plants that are surviving around the shore of Lake Merritt. Currently, we're doing it all virtually, and we have a website where people could go to see some of the ideas that we're promoting for distance learning, incorporating Lake Merritt, which is in the center of Oakland. Most kids and most people have been to Lake Merritt. And so it does allow you to bring something that people have directly experienced into activities, looking at it from a science and conservation viewpoint. But we have a underwater robotic vehicle, and we have developed a way for people to view it in a distanced way, so that we have a separate, we can look at it on different devices. You can actually look at it on your own iPhone, and that will allow people to get a new view of the lake and the underwater part of the ecosystem. So we feel like developing some of these hybrid distance activities, which draw also on people's experience that they already have, is a way to continue the vision of Paul Covell during this pandemic period when we really can't get large groups together.
David, is Lake Merritt a lake?
Well, no, not per se. It's it started out as a marshy area, a place where basically runoff water from creeks and rainfall just would come down the Oakland hills, headed towards the bay. And it's where the bay, before all of the development that we brought to this area occurred, where the bay and the fresh water would meet. And so it was a very rich and fertile ground, but a place where the importance and the significance of fresh water meeting salt water becomes this brackish environment, and certain special type of organisms in life thrive there. And it was when Samuel Merritt, Dr. Samuel Merritt, put in a retaining wall, and then got the city and others to put in a floodgate to control the incoming flow of the tide, that it was able to become the lake as we know it today.
Can you talk about how people could get involved as a volunteer?
I'm part of an organization, the Lake Merritt Institute, that has been working at the lake since the early 1990s. I believe 1992 or 1993 is the date that the city designated or made a contract with the Lake Merritt Institute to involve citizens in cleaning the lake.
Mm-hmm.
So again, this is another iteration of the idea of fostering stewardship among the people of Oakland. But every month, the Lake Merritt Institute pulls out thousands of pounds of trash from the lake and hauls it away so it's not floating and bobbing around in the lake. The other thing is that we are subject to a permit agreement with the Regional Water Quality Board to reduce the amount of trash that we allow to go out of Lake Merritt to a zero compared over the 2009 amount. And so every year, every 2 years, the city has to report to the Water Quality Board about how much trash was removed and not allowed to go into the greater San Francisco Bay. Mm-hmm. And the amount has to go down to zero by the year 2022. So it's going to be long haul. The city is definitely on top of it. The Measure DD funds have been very helpful. And Measure Q funds, we hope, will also be helpful in doing this, because nobody wants to see syringes in the beautiful habitat where they walk and run and enjoy the birds and the other wildlife.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And David, did you have a comment?
I do. The Lake Merritt Institute has been doing such a wonderful job, and my role, our role, has been to promote awareness of the Lake Merritt Institute in the community and to encourage volunteers. It's much of the work that is done through volunteers, and so we've been out there letting people know about it and encouraging more volunteers, and we endeavor to continue raising money for its operations and to think about effective ways for the Lake Merritt Institute to accomplish its mission, and also to think about how to expand its role and the impact of it, and given the overall scope of the work.
Any last thoughts on just the importance of the lake to the city and to its people?
Yeah, when I moved to Oakland and I saw the lake, I immediately connected with the opportunity to go down and mess around in the mud and the dirt and look at organisms and just be part of a bigger picture of my life than the rat race. And I've noticed that a lot of people have a similar response to Lake Merritt. They go there to talk with their best friends, to, when they want solitude. It's just such a beautiful place and has so much to offer. It's been part of Oakland since the earliest days, and it still has a attraction, magnetism, for everybody. It's really important. Mm-hmm. We found that so many people on Facebook. We had a petition to reopen the Nature Center. We had 300 people say wonderful things about Lake Merritt and how important it was to them going there as a child and learning about it, or as an adult. It's such a unique place. It's very important.
Well, I agree with everything Katie just said. And as far as the lake and its role in the city and the way that it shows up, what a fascinating time to ask that question. But first of all, given its central and low-lying location, and its natural beauty, it's always been a popular focal point and gathering place for celebrations over the years in the city. But we got Kaiser Industries located, Kaiser Worldwide Industries located there, the Oakland Museum, the Oakland Auditorium. These civic buildings and industrial giants are there for a reason, because not only was Lake Merritt an important place, but they wanted to elevate its importance and have it become a civic area for this kind of fostering. Now, over the years, as populations have shifted and evolved in Oakland, Lake Merritt's role and people's thoughts about it has gone through several incarnations. Since the time of the pandemic and the mass demonstrations about this systemic racism against African Americans and others, the gatherings have been much more intense, perhaps much more vibrant, perhaps much more upsetting for some, and yet all of that is like been contained within the awareness that it's happening at Lake Merritt. And I think that for many of us recognize it as an important central place for that kind of activity.
Well, thank you both so much. I really appreciate how you've, drawn environmentalism and community and it all happening at the lake. It's been really fun to talk to you about it. And thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. It's nice to meet both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.